Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Strategy Performance Scrutiny Board meeting, Wednesday the 1st of July. Do we have any substitutes, nominations for this meeting and apologies of absence?
We have one substitute.
Janet, you're on mute.
We have a substitute. Councillor Baines is substituting for Councillor Sweeney, and we have had apologies from Councillor Sweeney, Councillor Bellinger.
Right, okay. So we're still waiting for Councillor Gallagher and Councillor Dickinson to hopefully join us at some point. Members' interests. Do any members have any disclosable pecuniary or any other interests which will prevent them from participating in any discussion on the items or participating in any vote upon the items within this meeting? No, okay, that's great. Admission to the public. There are no items on here that are exempt, I believe. Okay, so
Councillor Bellinger, we just have an item, I think, to do with a review, and the scrutiny may have to leave the room for that discussion.
right, okay. Is that exempt from the public as well, or not? Is it just scrutiny staff?
No, just scrutiny staff can't
Admin staff.
participate.
Right, okay. No problem. Minutes of the last Strategy Performance Scrutiny Board meeting held on the 3rd of June. I've had a look through those this afternoon. There's nothing that stands out to me. Any members had a look through them, and anybody spotted anything that stands out to them? If not, are we happy to pass those minutes?
Yeah.
Councillor Lynn?
Yep.
And we have a second there. Councillor Porritt. Okay. So Councillor Lynn proposed and Councillor Porritt second that. Okay. The items that we have on tonight's agenda, we've had a little bit of a change round. We are going to change items 6 and 7 order around. So we'll have item 7 first and then item 6 afterwards. Item 7 is the work programme. Item 6 is the Democratic Services, the progress on the scrutiny review. Starting off this evening, we have the item 5, which is the review of the sports services. Now, this was something that we did some work on, myself, Councillor Robinson and Councillor Sweeney, where we did a review on the leisure services provisions, which went to Cabinet with recommendations. This report has now come back with answers to those recommendations. So Sarah, this is over to you, and I think Councillor Scullion, I think you might have some involvement with this as well, but Sarah, this bit's over to you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. First of all, just to thank you all once again for the comprehensive scrutiny of the Leisure Service and the very detailed report that we received with a number of recommendations in. To make it easier to follow, what we've done in terms of our response is identify each of those recommendations that were made, and we've put a response to those. So we've already started quite a bit of the work that was recommended by scrutiny, and I think you'll be able to see that within the report. There is other work to do, and you'll appreciate that closure due to COVID has sort of delayed what we were intending to do in a number of cases, but we've highlighted that in the report. I don't know if it's worthwhile just giving you a quick update with regard to the position with our buildings at the moment. They are all closed because of the COVID-19 situation. At the moment, the government have not advised that we're able to reopen sports halls and swimming pools. But once they do, we will review what we're able to do and what we're able to reopen safely for our staff and for our customers, and look at the potential challenges that we will have. So we're already looking, for example, at the issues that social distancing would cause in terms of being able to open our facilities fully, and the numbers of people that we will be able to admit would be severely impacted by that social distancing, which obviously we would need to do to maintain people's safety. An example would be in our pool. In our pools at the moment, they are closed, but if we were able to reopen them and maintain social distancing and the amount of additional cleaning that would be required, again, to maintain public safety, we'd be looking at potentially only being able to allow 8 people to be able to swim. So for every hour and a half that went by, only 8 people would be able to use the pool. So you can imagine the difficulties that there will be there in not only managing public expectations, but the serious impact that would have on our budgets as well. So there's a lot to consider, but we've got Gary Burns, who you've all met, working on plans for what we would need to do to each of our buildings to make them be able to be open safely for staff and customers. So I don't intend to take you through each of the recommendations. I'm sure you've all read them, despite what Councillor Robinson might have said earlier on. So really, I'm just open to any questions that anyone might have, or any other comments with regard to the response. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Members, I'm looking at the list. Okay, there's quite a few hands going up here. Councillor Robinson, I think Councillor Holden, I think Councillor Porritt I've got so far. So Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sarah, for the report. And yes, I have read the report now, and yeah, no, thank you. And I think what your responses highlight are the fact that I think the review has probably brought a few things to light, and a lot of the stuff that we've mentioned you are doing, I think it's fair to say. However, nonetheless, I think the review has put it on the table. So almost like it's brought the content to the forefront of our minds, which is especially important given the North Bridge proposal. I was just wondering, with regards, 2 questions really. Under 2.3, there's the business plan. I think it's 2.3. 2.1, sorry, 2.1, there's the business plan, and I was pleased to see that you are developing the business plan. Just wondering, will we ever get an opportunity to have a look at that business plan? And also my second question is 2.7. You mentioned that the memberships have been streamlined. I'm just wondering, how many memberships do we now offer? I think before it was quite a substantial variety of memberships. So just mainly, can we see the business plan, and how many memberships do you now offer? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Yeah, absolutely. Once we're in a position where we've got the business plan more or less where we need it to be, then we'll be more than happy to bring that back to scrutiny and share that and get your advice and guidance with regards to anything that we might have missed. In terms of memberships, we now have 3 main types of memberships, but those are broken down then in terms of how people might want to pay. So we've got a corporate membership, we've got a full membership, and then we've got junior memberships. And those are, within each of those, we've got passport to leisure fees, we've got annual fees, and what's the other one? And then staff rates as well. So basically just three main memberships.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sarah. I think that's a substantial change. And I think it's something really that we can build off, especially within the marketing. So yeah, well done. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Holden.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for the noise in the background. Someone decided that the washing machine might be a good idea. I've got two questions. One is, given the current situation that we're in with regards to COVID, from a membership point of view, have we had to give any mass amounts of refunds? And obviously, no one's going to be taking out new memberships whilst this is all going on, whilst we haven't got access to the system. So what's the financial impact to that service? The second is, have the management of leisure services taken full advantage of this 3-month period that they've had, this, well, nearly 4-month period, to actually formulate a best and worst case scenario with regards to the service and the recommendations that have been put forward?
Thank you, Councillor Holden. In terms of memberships, what we agreed with our members at the beginning of lockdown was that we would freeze their membership, and any unused portion would be added on to the end of their membership once we were able to reopen. We have had a number of people cancel memberships, as you would expect, but it's not huge amounts. However, because the memberships are now frozen and we're not receiving income, there is a significant impact to the service. We've tried to mitigate that by, we recently furloughed a significant number of staff from the Sports and Leisure Service to try and offset the amount that obviously we're not now bringing in income. But I think, you know, you're quite right. The situation with our budgets is very, very challenging. We were already looking at operating at a loss with regards to our sports services because of the significant costs associated with running swimming pools, basically. But clearly we need to provide that service to ensure that we can meet our ambitions to be the most active borough in the north. We've got an obligation to provide excellent facilities for our residents to keep fit and keep active and keep healthy. But that comes at a cost. And prior to COVID, as I say, we were already operating at a loss. That's now being exacerbated by the situation that we find ourselves in. But because of the fact that we're an income generating service, we were able to take advantage of the government's furlough scheme for those particular members of staff. In relation to your second question, yes, managers within the service have been working really hard to look carefully at our service operation plans and see whether or not they were fit for purpose. The service as we had it was, all our council services now, there's not a lot of slack to allow managers to look at the future of the service, to make plans for future delivery, and this has really provided us with that. So that's one bonus of the situation we find ourselves in. So all that is going into the risk assessment and the planning for reopening, and also into the business plan that's been developed for the next 5 years.
Councillor Porritt and Councillor Lynn.
Hi, yeah, it's almost more of a comment than a question, I suppose. Looking at the remit of the report, obviously the report was done before any of us had any idea the position we were going to be in now, and recommendations and suggestions are from another time when we weren't living like we are now. And I know we're talking about opening safely and we're talking about social distancing and so on, but realistically that's going to be a really long time. You know, I think, you know, we are probably going to have another spike, possibly another spike. You're looking at pockets of cases now in all sorts of areas. We've got Leicester now in lockdown. We've got, you know, looking at more cases in Bradford and in Kirklees and all around this area. And I just feel like sitting here discussing the future of leisure services at a time when you are not in a position to know what the future of leisure services can be within the next 6 months or a year. It's just a really, really difficult position for us all to find ourselves in. And I appreciate this has been delayed coming back to scrutiny because of COVID. But I just feel like I don't know how many useful conversations we can have around this at this point, looking at the finances, looking at the position in terms of access to services. I mean, I'd love to be sitting here asking questions about how we can improve services in our small towns, and access to leisure in places that don't have council leisure facilities. But I'm not going to ask questions about that because we're in no position to address that at the moment. And really, it just kind of wanted to sort of get a bit real with it and give you that that sense that we can't hold leisure services to account at this time. I don't think. I think we're just in uncharted waters.
I fully understand where you're coming from there, Councillor Corritt. I suppose with this, it's a case of ensuring that we're in a position where we're actually prepared for the future, for when we do get back to normality, when that may be. And I suppose what we need to look at is, are there any ways where we could mitigate the financial losses that we're actually receiving at the moment through the leisure services system? Is there, and one of the questions I've got actually, which is sort of like coming from this and what you've already said, Sarah, is the fact that is the potential to maybe open up parts of our leisure centres, the exercise rooms where there's actually space where people could exercise at a distance between each other, sort of like in a class type environment, rather than the swimming pools and where the gyms and stuff like that. So I don't know, I suppose we can look at ways of where we can maybe start to reopen in certain sections of the thing. But I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Corritt, with your comment there. If Sarah, you want to come back on that one.
Yes, please, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Porritt, for understanding the position that we're in. It is very difficult for us to make any predictions about how the service might move forward. But what I can tell you is that the service are looking really hard at what is going to be possible, and taking into account all of the known things that we've currently got in terms of government advice around social distancing and the need for deep cleaning, etc., etc. What we also know is that the government haven't announced yet that sports centres and swimming pools are some of the services that can reopen. But we're working towards models that will allow us to do just exactly as you said, Chair, have partial openings of certain areas that might be easier to manage than others. But again, all of those things need to be looked at in terms of, this is what we could do, but actually, is it the right thing to do from a financial perspective, and also from a protection of the public perspective? So we're giving it lots and lots of thought at the moment.
I'll unmute myself, that'd be better. Councillor Lynn, Councillor Naeem, and Councillor Robinson.
Yes, thank you very much for the report, Sarah, and pass on our thanks to Gary for it. There's obviously some really good work going on, and I entirely hear what Councillor Porritt is saying about we don't want to be kind of like pie in the sky. You know, it's clearly going to be really challenging because we don't know how long this is going to go on for, this situation and so on. But nevertheless, I also take what one of the other members said, which is that sometimes, and I suspect that some of us have all been doing this as councillors, it's the last 14 weeks have been an opportunity to think about prioritising what should we be doing, what are the most important things that we should be doing. And I suppose what I would like to just focus on, you know, partly because of my own ward, Park Ward, where we've got real challenges in terms of how fit people are, how much exercise people take, issues about childhood obesity, and so on and so on, the demand for women-only swimming sessions, and so on and so forth. I just think, I would like to think that going forward, the business plan that you referred to in the earlier section of the report will actually do as is having to happen with a number of other services, youth services, for example, in the council. And that is to say that we really have, we may very well face a future where we have to focus on where the greatest need is, really. So it may be that we are no longer in a situation where we can, you know, provide provide have universal provision. I think it's great if we can offer provision once we're able to reopen for the gym and swimming and other sports activities that we offer, which are commercially sound, where people pay to use them. But I suppose my question really would be the extent to which we have the capacity in Calderdale to look at the information that we've got coming through the joint strategic needs assessment, the health assessments. We know where the gaps are. I mean, your chances of living, your chances of living, to a good age are significantly better in some parts of the borough than in others. And some of that may very well be down to lifestyle issues, really. And some of it are also down to issues about what can people afford, because an awful lot of leisure things, apart from going for a walk, cost money. So I suppose it's really just, my question is, to what extent is it on the radar of the service that you're thinking about how can we look going forward to really try to focus on narrowing the gap, narrowing the health gap, narrowing the inequalities gap, and focusing our work, possibly with the support of the NHS and social prescribing and all the rest of it. But are we really going to try and say, look, this is what we can do? We can't do everything for everybody, but one of the things we can do is try to narrow the gap to our leisure provision. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Councillor Lynn. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Our core offer is around the leisure centres and the services that we provide through those. But we also do an awful lot more. We do a lot through our Better Living team to support people who've got various health issues or are in our most deprived areas. And we use the data that's collected by our business intelligence team and the data that supported our bid that went into Active Calderdale about why it's important that we get people within Calderdale being more active more of the time. So the service has a huge role to play in that. It's not just about leisure centres. They're there for people who are comfortable and happy to go into places like that and do their exercising. But we also are able to provide much more bespoke one-to-one support for individuals who need it because of their comorbidities, the issues around poverty, and working closely with our colleagues in the NHS to make sure that we are targeting the right areas with the right support.
Councillor Naeem.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I suppose it's on the same theme that I'm looking at. I understand that the Cabinet is going to consider a report next week in terms of looking at what services need to be reopened or restarted again. And I'm just wondering what the process is going to be. So given what's been said today, has there been any sort of thought about leisure services in particular? And what is the process going to be in terms of who makes the decision, in terms of what services we do bring back, or, is it to do with the government advice, or is it to do with the local thing? And is the Cabinet that's going to be provided with that kind of the information? And from your point of view, Sarah, in terms of leisure services, will you be giving some advice to Cabinet, so saying which services or which part of the service we can sort of restart again? I'm just wondering about the process, because the report to Cabinet isn't very specific, and it could be because of financial implications, that we can't bring back services sooner. It could be because of COVID, the situation isn't safe enough, but it's not very specific. And I'm just wondering what the process is going to be about that. Maybe you can comment on
that. Councillor Scullion, would you be better positioned to answer that, do you think?
Chair, through you, and Councillor Naeem is absolutely right that this is really a crucial period. There's an awful lot to do, and there are some decisions to be made. But I think it is a dynamic in terms of day-to-day and week. I understand government's guidance about public health and public safety, and also the financial information and grants and things that are coming from central government. We are, I understand, expecting a further announcement from Robert Jenrick, the Secretary of State, about local government finances. So we're really watching the situation day by day. But your question really, Councillor Naeem, was about, well, what's actually happening behind the scenes, and are leisure directors and others really looking at all of the possibilities? I think there are two things to say. One is about the recovery period. We do have a recovery board with our partners in police and health and the voluntary sector, and a whole series of subgroups that are beavering away on exactly those issues, getting the best of data, best of good practice from elsewhere, and indeed abroad, and looking at what we might do in this recovery phase. The second bit is going to be about recovery, stabilisation, and then a reset, really. Because various members have touched on the fact that things won't be the same. Until there's a vaccine, we have to live with this virus. So things can't be exactly the same. And people keep talking about back to normal. And I'm afraid until there's a vaccine, there will be no back to normal. So the question is how we manage this recovery and stabilisation phase, and then how we move on to reset. And that's what we're in the middle of working on at the moment. As I say, there are a number of small officer groups working away with partners in health, in the police, in the college, in the voluntary and community sector, working on those things. But sometimes it's slightly more art than science than it should be. We're working on all the data, but the situation is so dynamic and so changing. And I was listening to what you as members said about how difficult it was to plan when it's such a dynamic and fluid situation. I can only echo that. But we do have good data, by and large. We do have good assistant directors and directors. We know our buildings. We know our finances. There are things that we can bring forward through Cabinet over the next 3 months, and also to Scrutiny, in terms of understanding what the grid is that we're working through of decision making in order to get to a point where we feel that we actually can move on to the next phase. I'll stop there.
If I can just interject here, Councillor Scullion, this obviously, is this the future council group, which is actually in the financial report that's going to Cabinet? Is this the group that make the decisions on the leisure services, and obviously decisions on the household waste recycling centres as well? Is it this group that's doing that?
Chair, the constitution of the council gives most of the decision-making responsibility to the Cabinet itself, of course, informed by the workings of groups like that. There are a small number of decisions that go to the full council, but it would be through the usual structures through the Cabinet.
Okay. Councillor Robinson, you had another question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Mainly just a quick kind of elaboration just on one aspect of the report, and then mainly a proposal, if I may. Just point number 2.5. We're discussing we're proposing a hub and spoke model. Now this is copying what the libraries do, and the main reason why we propose this is because one of the problems is that a lot of our fitness facilities have swimming pools, which cost a fortune, and that obviously affects profit. Or we can't use profit on the council income or surplus or whatever terminology we use. So the reason why we're proposing in the report, in the review, hub and spoke, is because we're saying essentially for future capital projects, for future investment, instead of, we've got our main facilities, we've got North Bridge, we've got Brighouse, Salisbury Bridge with swimming facilities. In areas that don't have these swimming facilities, we could bring the cost down by having gym-only facilities, and therefore we're actually increasing access to fitness but with also generating commercial opportunities and also reducing the cost to the council. So that was the main purpose of having this hub and spoke model. So has Sarah gone? Oh, there she is, right. So yeah, so that was the main purpose. So I just wanted to outline that to Sarah, and then I understand that the strategy, I think it's until 2027. So hopefully as part of the new strategy, you might consider incorporating some kind of hub and spoke model for future capital investment, possibly. And then my proposal was just to mainly thank Sarah and her team for responding to the review. Thank you for the comments, and we look forward to future progress and watching the service blossom.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you, George. I think I had a few points that I'd sort of like picked up through this report as well, and that was 2.3, which is the sports service manager. I'm just trying to go back through the report now, if it'll allow me to do it. The Director of Public Services is asked to ensure that the service has sufficient delegated powers to take forward improvements to the service. I think with this, it still feels, or it still seems to read as though Gary would be sort of like micromanaged. And I think what we wanted to do was give him a little bit more freedom with regards his ideas in generating possible income as well. It says the day-to-day operations are delegated to the sports service manager, which include the allocated budgets. The service does not currently achieve any surplus income, because obviously we were discussing some of the income going back into the leisure facilities as well. And I think through conversations that we've actually had in the past, there were some good ideas coming forward, but I think Gary felt that it was being held back sometimes due to bureaucracy. And I think this is one of the things we wanted people like Gary and staff to come forward with their ideas, and you know, if we could work with these ideas, encourage them to put them forward, especially if they were going to help generate income into that service. So obviously I think that, I don't know if you want to sort of like just touch on that for us, Sarah. Just want to elaborate on it maybe.
Yeah. As the manager who manages Gary, I'd like to see any opportunity I could ever have to micromanage him, quite honestly. But Gary is very knowledgeable about the sports service. He's worked in it for many years, and him and his team have got some fantastic ideas about how we might improve things. We've recently carried out, well, recently, just prior to COVID, we carried out a lot of discovery work with the people who work in the service to ask their ideas about what is it that's making life, what makes their life difficult at work. What kind of easy things could we look at that would make it easier for them to provide a great service to the public? We've developed training for them to look at being ambassadors for the service, ambassadors for the brand of Calderdale Sport and Leisure. And these are all ideas that have come from Gary and his team. So, you know, we've taken on board what you've said, and we're unleashing Gary, but, you know, you might be a bit worried about what you wished for.
Don't worry, we'll be keeping a close eye. I'm sure it'll be good. The other thing is 2.4, and that's the marketing and corporate liaison as well, which is a great idea, is that, because I think one of the things that we'd all sort of like picked up on was I think the way that we were actually approaching prospective customers as they came in. We weren't getting the details off them. We weren't going back to them afterwards. So having somebody that can do that, and I think that person they have the opportunity to work throughout the whole of the service and the centres that we have as well throughout Calderdale.
So the things that you highlighted when you did the review were, as you said, we were missing opportunities to pick up more business and to get people signed up to what we've got on offer. And that's part of the work that we've been doing with staff. So they will now be, they're now trained to be able to do that, to have that conversation and to be a bit more proactive about getting people signed up to things when they come in, which is not a usual way of working for a local authority leisure service. It is more what you'd see in a private sector, but clearly that's the business we need to be in, and we're grateful to you for highlighting that, and we've taken it on board. In terms of the marketing and business development role, they will be looking at a more strategic level about what we ought to be doing to encourage additional business, and then filtering that down to the staff who would deliver it. And yes, absolutely, while there would be, if a decision is made to say that we will move to a new Halifax Leisure Centre, there will be an enormous amount of time spent focusing on making sure that we've got the business to make that run. But absolutely, we'll be looking at our other centres across the borough as well.
Brilliant. And I think I just add one more, which was 2.9, which was regarding our staff memberships as well. I think I were quite keen. I think some other members were quite keen as well, that we actually did a little bit more for our staff in relation to either a free membership, or if they introduced someone to pay for a full membership, then they received a free membership. And I think that's all about our way of improving the well-being of our staff within the authority, and something that obviously, because we're not the most well-paid authority, we're probably one of the best authorities to work for, but if we can give more incentives which then actually boost our staff's financial package, should I say, at the end of the month. So I think that was one of the things I was pushing for, and that doesn't seem to highlight that in 2.9.
So that's understood, and it's really appreciated that members are keen to see that staff do have things that would improve their physical and mental health and well-being. One of the challenges that we face as local government officers is that we can't receive benefits that other members of the public aren't entitled to. So that sort of ties our hands a little bit in terms of those kind of offers. That's not to say that we won't do what we can. So we've got corporate offers, which means we've got discounts for our employees. We offer space within the buildings when we know it's a quiet time. So we've mentioned here about racket sports, but also any of the five-a-side courts and things like that. When we know we've got a quiet time, the building's staffed anyway, so we will make it available for staff to be able to use free of charge. But in terms of memberships, I think that would be a little bit more difficult, which is why we've not been able to progress that.
Okay, no problem. Appreciate that. Councillor Holden.
Thanks, Jess. Just a very quick comment, and it just goes back to the communications side of things. On my daily travels around Calderdale, I pass a large number of roundabouts that have had these signs that in the past we've used for selling advertising. Now, these as far as I'm aware, haven't been changed in years. And it's free advertising space that we really should be making use of. So when things start to recover, you know, it's just a point that we should be speaking to comms to start making use of that essentially dead space as it stands at the moment. It's not earning us any money as it stands, but it's something that we should be making use of every possible avenue.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
I agree with Councillor Holland on that one. I think something our commercialisation team could potentially look at as well, along with yourself, Sarah. I think. Yeah, definitely. Okay. Sorry, Sarah. Did you want to come in on that? No. Okay. Any more questions, members? No. Okay. Right.
Sorry, Paul. I think I've put on record a proposal just to. I didn't mean to take your function away as chair on the chat box. My apologies. It was mainly just to note to you. I've put on record a proposal just to mainly thank Sarah and her team for responding to the report. And then on the chat function, Councillor Porritt has seconded that. Yeah, over to you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and yeah, that's fair enough. Is that I agree with that. I think there's been some good discussion around this evening, and realistic discussion as well, Councillor Porritt. So there is a lot we can do here. It's an interesting area. It is tough times at the moment. We're unsure how things are going to go. Hopefully they will improve, and if they improve, we can get back to normality. But no, I appreciate the work that's everybody's undertaken here, and it'll be interesting to see the future of our leisure services as and when we can get back to using them. Some of us need to. Right. Thank you, Sarah.
Sorry, Paul.
No, I'm not putting that on record, George.
Could we? Well, that was poetic. Could we vote for that, please? So it's put forward as a formal recommendation, just a recommendation of thanks.
We all agree with it, George.
Yeah.
There's no problem with it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. Councillor Lynn?
No, just what everybody's
agreeing. Was that just an agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. Fabulous. Okay. Thank you, Sarah. We shall now move on to item 7, which is the work programme. Because obviously we'll switch these round, so we'll have item 6 afterwards. Let's scroll down to item 7. Okay. So Lauren, is this over to you now?
Yeah, if that's okay, Chair. Just to sort of say, there were quite a few recommendations and comments from members at the last meeting, and those have now been incorporated. We're working with officers around the sort of the COVID implications and that work about when we timescale those in. But on the whole, most of them are fixed now. We said that we would leave some space until the end of the year on any finance items. And obviously, Councillor Bellinger, you mentioned the financial recovery plan, which we also discussed with Nigel at the last meeting, which is due to go to Cabinet on Monday. So there is some flexibility. If we need to move things around, we can do. But yeah, happy for any amends to be made and any suggestions to be put forward.
Right. Did we say we wanted to have a look at the financial recovery plan before it went to Cabinet in August?
It's actually going on Monday the 6th of July. I think the one in August is more of a detailed plan in terms of the services and how they reopen. I think Mike might be able to come in a bit more on that.
Oh yeah. Sorry, thanks.
Well, I don't think I can say much more than Lauren said, really. The financial recovery plan report goes in July to Cabinet and signals a further discussion in August about more detail on when services will reopen.
Okay. Then there was the other report, which I seem to have moved somewhere.
Yeah, so at the last meeting we had a conversation, didn't we, on the finance items around the homelessness update. And Heidi Wilson, Strategic Housing Officer, she's prepared a report which I've shared with members.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the briefing on temporary accommodation.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Which we have had a look at that, and some of us have noticed on that. And there's certainly some figures there that I think we'd like to discuss. I think in this, Councillor Lynn.
Yes, I just wanted to thank Lauren for securing us that report. I thought it was great having it just circulated as a report for information. I've already written to Heidi to say on another matter, but actually mentioned in that email how much I appreciated the range of work that's going on. Absolutely terrific. Some really good detail. And I was very happy with that, really. I haven't got any other issues really that I wanted to mention other than to say thanks for getting us the report, and it was very useful. Thanks.
I think one of the things that I'd picked up in that report, and that was the cost for the gathering place, which was £433,530, which seems to be quite a large amount of money for a 6-month period. And I think fair enough, it's working on 29 people. However, the figures come through just under 40,000 for the first month of looking after 8, possibly 12 people. So it's quite a considerable figure, which I think is something that we can. I've asked for a bit more information on this from Heidi. She won't be back to work until next Monday. But Nigel's asked for a more breakdown as to these figures and where they've been paid to. And hopefully I'll be able to have a chat with Heidi next week just to get a bit more clarity on these, to be honest. I don't know if anybody wants to come in on this. No. Councillor Lee?
Yes, just to say that if we're moving on, just to say that I think that Sean did a good job of actually listening to what we'd said at our last meeting about the work programme, and I think it's kind of quite good. I mean, we're going to, for example, one thing that Councillor Naeem and I were interested in was seeing, especially in view of this quite topical at the moment, the whole diversity thing, seeing what progress had been made on the diversity and inclusion report. And quite properly, we've said, well, we're going to look at that in January, because that then was 12 months from when we actually looked at it before, and so on. And similarly, the whole devolution thing in the run up to, after all, to the, we're going to have mayoral elections next May, all being well. So I think that I think you've done a really good job on that. And for me, and also I appreciate that you've built in some kind of flexibility for us to be able to do the necessary scrutiny of the finances to the authority, given all the terrible challenges that lie ahead of us, really. So that's why I'm really pleased that in the next few months we haven't got an overloaded programme, because I think if we're going to do a good job on trying to support the scrutiny function in relation to finance, I think we need to just have like one main topic per session, and then we've also got an opportunity to have another at the other part of the meeting focusing on finance, and I think that's a very wise way to set it out. That was all I wanted to say. So
no, I appreciate that. I think you have a point there, definitely, Councillor. So, anybody else got anything they'd like to add or like to see that we add to the work plan? No. Mike, Lauren? No, so we're okay with that then?
Yeah, all good. If there is anything, we can just build it in and discuss at the next meeting.
I'm sure we can. Yeah, we can just email it out to everybody as well, can't we? If anything else pops up that we can fit in there. Yeah, not a problem. Okay. Moving on to item 6, which is democratic services. Now, this is the progress of the service and the scrutiny review. So I think at this point we lose Lauren and Kirsty and Janet. Are we losing you as well at this moment? No? Okay.
Chair, can I just interject that there's no real need to lose anybody, including Lauren. That was her personal view that she wanted to step out of it just in case.
Right. Oh, that's fair enough.
It's still a public meeting, and it's a discussion around the scrutiny service as opposed to the individuals who operate it.
Right. Okay. No, that's fine. I'm happy with that. So, Ian, this is an oral report, so this is over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm tempted to say it's back to members, if I'm honest, just because obviously it is your scrutiny process. It is something that you work with, and as officers, we are there to support you and to ensure that the vitally important scrutiny function that all local authorities undertake for well-documented reasons of check, balance, challenge, assessment and audit are undertaken in a way that ensures that the difficult questions that need to be asked are answered. The reports that you require are provided in a timely way and provide you with the information that then you can assess whether the service that is behind that particular report is being delivered in a way that provides value for money, addresses the significantly difficult issues that some services have to deal with, and that you as officers who populate scrutiny boards are satisfied that the information that you need to do the job, the vitally important job that you do, is provided to you. And I suppose who better than you as members to say, yes, that is happening. We are satisfied that we are able to properly understand, properly deal with, properly challenge officers and cabinet members, and that we are supported in that task by having the informed information provided by the scrutiny support team. So that is what I am tasked with providing to you. Mike in particular, as my senior scrutiny officer, your senior scrutiny officer, took on a slightly different role following the review to undertake more training, more management of the scrutiny process, and to allow the two assistant scrutiny officers to provide the sort of input that hopefully has been provided to you in a way that you appreciate. And in order for there to be a strategic understanding of the scrutiny role, and that rests with Mike to understand quite what it is that's being looked at across all the scrutiny boards, to liaise very closely with the chairs and deputy chairs to ensure that there is an appropriate division of the work that needs to be looked at, and the appropriate scrutiny board is sort of steered in the right way of looking at that. There's also a role that they undertake, which is as important, is to look at the wider policy reviews that are required, the in-depth work that needs to be undertaken, and to direct and manage that accordingly. Now, I know from speaking with Mike that he is relishing and enjoying the task that was set to him of working with Lauren and Alex, and that is invigorating his own approach to scrutiny. And I hope very much that it is also a position from which you as scrutiny board members are benefiting. I don't want to personalize this. This isn't about Lauren and Alex. It's about the roles that they undertake. But I will say this on record, that I think they have both taken to the task incredibly well. And I know from comments that have been made about some of the reports that have been submitted, that they are well written, concise, and provide you with information that is required. But it isn't about them as individuals, it's about the service. I know there was concern about the changes that were being made and about whether you would receive a seamless transition into the role of the scrutiny boards. I hope from the fact that I am getting few, if any, comments through of a negative aspect, if any, in fact, that is something that we are delivering to you, and therefore the confidence that I had at the time of recommending the changes and the review of the structure to you is borne out. I think that's all I can probably say at this stage. Obviously, more than happy to take questions from members.
Yeah. Thank you, Ian. No, I appreciate that. And I must admit, we've worked, obviously myself, Naeem, as deputy chair, and other chairs as well. I've had quite a number of months now of working with the new team, and I'm happy. It's working well, to be honest. And they've been thrown in, I'd probably say, into the deep end as well, especially with what's happened recently with these unprecedented times. It's made changes to the way we work. So it's a case of they've had that opportunity to learn the role, then all of a sudden they've had to learn something new so soon. So it's been difficult but challenging, and you know they've really done extremely well. So I've got nothing but praise. But I've got Councillor Barnes, and I've got Councillor Naeem, and I've got Councillor Lynn that have come in with questions so far. So Councillor Barnes.
It's not a question, it's a comment, and I just think, considering Ian started by saying he was going to turn that on his head, that was a very nice speech, Ian. I think it's difficult being starting last year as a councillor. I've got nothing really to judge it against, or very little to judge it against. All I can say is that since the changes have occurred, there haven't been any problems. It worked smoothly. Emails have been answered promptly. Requests have been answered diligently and promptly. And all I can say is so far it's worked. Therefore, that's it really.
Councillor Ian.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to endorse what Ian sort of said, without seeming to personalise it, I think the two scrutiny officers in question have actually sort of risen to the challenge very well. And like everybody else has sort of experienced the fact that every time we've actually contacted certainly Sir Lauren and Sir Alex, they've responded very quickly and you know, appropriately to the information that's requested. And given the challenges that's been around with the current situation, I think they've actually sort of, you know, within the structure has actually sort of worked very well. So I just want to sort of say, I think there were sort of concerns at the outset. Now, you know, they were on the basis that we weren't sure how it's going to sort of pan out. And generally speaking, I think I've been very pleased with the support that we've received. And as you sort of said, Paul, you know, certainly the agenda meetings that we've had with Lauren and Mike and with Alex a few times on other matters, they've been very constructive. And let's move forward positively.
Okay. Councillor Lynn.
Yes. Well, I must admit, I'll endorse the positive comments of other members. Really, I think it has worked very well. But just a couple of challenges now, really, I suppose, going forward for Ian. Ian will know that one of the things that I was concerned about a couple of years back was the way in which Calderdale Council interacted with the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and in fact, we had a review of that and how all that worked, and what support members who participated in structures within the Combined Authority were supported. And one of the recommendations of that was that actually there should be an automatic protocol whereby they got properly briefed and debriefed from the various committees that they were on. Now, and I'm very well aware that obviously Councillor Scullion is here, and, you know, cabinet members, a number of them have some very senior, that occupy some very senior positions on the Combined Authority, and I'm sure do get properly briefed by senior officers in the authority. But there are some people who aren't members of the cabinet in all cases, and who sometimes are on authority. So there's a question for me really that's still outstanding, which is, first of all, and this may be nothing to do with scrutiny, it was just one of the things which was talked about was what support, what capacity there might be to offer more support to members who have to participate in the functions of the Combined Authority. Now, this becomes even more important when we think about we're going into a situation where less than 12 months from now, there will be a mayor, you know, an elected mayor of West Yorkshire and deputy mayors and so on, and all sorts of things happening. So I suppose I've got two questions really. One is, how does the kind of scrutiny, does the scrutiny function connect at all in terms of the work that was done a little while ago to try to think about what support members might need to participate effectively in the Combined Authority? And secondly, to what extent might we anticipate any changes in the way we do scrutiny as we gear up more to recognise that we are, you know, we're going to be much more embedded in this West Yorkshire scenario with a mayor and so on, and we need to also be learning from what's going on in other authorities. I mean, I have to say that one of the things, just round off, one of the things that has been quite good in terms of some of the reports and investigations the scrutiny committees have done has been that I know that Mike and his team have been keen to kind of bring in experience from other places, and I think that's all to the good, and I'd like to see more of that. So those are my two questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Councillor Lynn will just forgive me if I point out that whilst the progression towards a mayoral combined authority is undertaken, it isn't a foregone conclusion that it happens. There's a consultation process that's underway, and there are still decisions that will need to be taken by all the constituent authorities.
Yeah, that's fair comment. I apologise.
Yes, I think one of the things that's been mentioned across all of the West Yorkshire authorities is the issue of scrutiny. It's an issue that's been brought up through the early stages of the process that's already underway. And there's a recognition within the combined authority as is that scrutiny is a function that needs to be enhanced as part of the development of the mayoral combined authority, if and when it happens. I have a discussion tomorrow with directors across West Yorkshire about one of the work streams that is required as part of the work that needs to be undertaken to develop the model that will be operating. And scrutiny is one of those areas that needs to be fully considered. It needs to be enhanced in the scheme itself. And I think that's something that's underway as well for the scheme that's submitted in September to include greater reference to the scrutiny function. So there will be, I think, an enhancement of that. As far as the capacity then for members to positively input into the issues that are then discussed within the combined authority, that also recognises that the information that disseminates from the combined authority needs to be better. It needs to be more widely available and in a format that is digestible to all members, not just those who are actively involved in the workings of it. And that is also something that needs to be enhanced through the administrative support that is being worked on and developed to enable the mayor, particularly whoever he or she might be, to have the ability to be better at communicating the work of the combined authority. And communication then sits with a better understanding, and it also brings with it, inevitably, a better scrutiny process, because if members are have the information available to them, they will challenge it and seek to comment on it, which has to be a positive thing. So the answers aren't there yet, Councillor Lynn. They aren't in a format that I could sort of point you to and say this is what it will be looking like. But it is something that has been recognised, and it's been picked up through comments such as ones made by Calderdale scrutiny process over the past few months, to say it's not where it needs to be. And that's something that needs to be enhanced. It also needs to benefit, as you say, from best practice across the West Yorkshire authorities. We have a very good reputation for the scrutiny work that we do across the health sector particularly. And I think there's some things that need to be picked up and learned from that and then incorporated into the approach that the combined authority takes to ensure that it is a body that is recognised more widely for the significant input that it will have to have if and when it becomes something that is implemented.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Holden.
Thanks, Chair. I'd like to echo some of the comments that were made earlier. As most people know, I was probably one of the strongest critics of any changes to the scrutiny process and the structure. But I have to say that so far I've been proven completely wrong. I'm more than happy to admit to it. I'd also like to put on record that throughout the challenging, to say the least, last 3.5–4 months, not only scrutiny support but democratic support officers have played an outstanding role in providing us with the information that we've asked for in a timely manner. They've obviously had one hell of a task, having to chase officers who aren't just around the corner, you know, many of which are working from home. So I think, you know, thanks must be given not only to our scrutiny support officers, but also the democratic support officers who have played an outstanding role in completely unprecedented times.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Chair. That's most welcome praise. And I'd like perhaps to take an opportunity to extend that across all officers within the council. I think I've been daily impressed with the way in which officers have adapted, taken approaches that would have ordinarily taken months to implement, but they've been introduced in a matter of days. The responsiveness of officers across the board, and I think members can be justifiably proud of the council, that they they are responsible for. It's delivering in extremely difficult times. And I think also members need to have a pat on your own backs, because I think the contribution that you've made, the understanding that you've given to the way in which the processes that we have in place need to be tweaked, amended. You work with them, and you've all taken very, very quickly, remarkably quickly, to the virtual meeting process. It's almost as if it's always been something that we've done. And I know it's not been easy on many occasions, but it works. And you know, I think it's a system that unfortunately is in until May of next year only. I think there needs to be some real hard thinking about continuing this, even if it's in a hybrid form, going into to the future, to ensure that the accessibility, not just for the public but for members as well, needs to be kept in place, so that it delivers democracy in a very different way, a very adaptive way, and ensures that it's accessible to all, and that's important. So thank you, Councillor Horgan.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Considering that many of us was quite reluctant to go paperless, and now been thrown into having no choice but to go paperless and have all meetings this way, I think, yeah, I have to mirror what you've said there, Ian. I think a lot of all the members have done extremely well. Officers as well have done extremely well in the way we've had to change the way we work, which I mentioned before. So I've got nothing but praise. And the fact that the officers and support staff have also been running the members' COVID system, as well as doing their own work. So they've been, you know, they've had extra thrown on top of them as well. And one of the things I'm going to be raising soon with Jackie Addison, and I wanted to mention this now, and I've mentioned this to Mike and Lauren already, and that's to ensure that our staff that are working from home and have no choice to go out anywhere are still cautious about their own mindfulness and taking time away from their PCs and other IT equipment just to have some downtime, basically. I mean, I've spoken to an officer recently who started work at 4:30 in the morning, and she was still working at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Obviously dedication for you, but at the end of the day, it can be unhealthy. So as long as our staff are taking that time, that downtime for their own health, it is imperative that they do that. But no, thank you for everybody for what they've all done, and I think we've done extremely well as an authority. So thank you. I don't think there is any more questions from any members. Councillor Lynn?
Just, I think Mike Lodge was asking if he could say a couple of words.
Yeah, sorry, Mike, have I missed you there?
Yeah, no worries. I mean, first of all, thank you for all your positive feedback. That's very pleasing. Thank you very much. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention, and I suppose a bit like your first discussion about leisure services. When the review was done, we didn't expect to be in the middle of a pandemic in the way that we are. So that's had an impact on it. And one of the impacts it's had is us being very clear with colleague officers that we don't want them to take them away from the front line, as you know, in writing long reports for you. And I think members have been very understanding about the fact that members have used reports that have been written for other purposes or brief reports. And I actually think there's some quite positives, because conciseness will actually help you. And I think that's something we can learn for the future. I think that the other point I'd want to make is that one of the consequences of working remotely like we are is that we haven't picked up on the detailed reviews that we were doing over the past 3 or 4 months. And I think that was part of the review of the scrutiny way of working. And you've had the leisure services discussion earlier on. Councillor Lynn has mentioned the West Yorkshire Combined Authority work that you did. The work that the CYP board did on the youth service has been well received. And me and the team were talking just this afternoon about how we can talk to the scrutiny chairs and deputy chairs about picking up on the detailed review work in a way that we haven't for the first 3 or 4 months. And I think, again, perhaps to pick up on Councillor Lynn's point about West Yorkshire, if taking on Ian's point about consultation, but scrutiny changes because of the context. And I've worked a lot on, as members know, on the health side of things, and my relationship with colleagues across West Yorkshire is 5 times what it was 5 years ago. You know, there's a lot more work done to West Yorkshire level, and that's the context, and we need to respond to that. And I think the other thing I would say is thank you to members of scrutiny boards, all the scrutiny boards, for the way you have responded when, you know, occasionally bits and pieces have gone wrong in terms of technology or getting used to new ways of working. You've been very understanding. You've reminded us once or twice, which is your role. But thank you for that.
Okay, no, appreciate that. Thank you, Mike. I think then, on that note, we're done. So thank you, everybody. We can say we can go to the pub, but we can't. Right. Thank you, everybody.